What's up, everybody? Welcome back. And today we're going to be talking to the community manager at Offworld for Squad, Ceeg. Much of this conversation will be about the Squad Arena event that didn't go as planned, along with what Offworld intends to do in the event hosting space, especially with some form of competitive events and their involvement in the competitive community. So as always, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below, although I would ask you to keep it constructive. Now, a quick disclaimer is that this video is not paid for or sponsored by Offworld, nor am I employed by Offworld. Now, I was going to be involved in Squad Arena from a shoutcasting perspective, but I was coming on pretty late because of my own scheduling. In that, I saw some of the problems in the immediate aftermath. Now, the idea behind this video was actually Ceeg. He reached out, asked if there would be interest in doing some sort of video, sort of like a debrief of the event to talk about what happened, and I was pretty hesitant about taking this on. Obviously, when you have a failed event like this, you're going to have negativity, complaints, and concerns about what Offworld's trying to accomplish. But of course, with that negativity suggests passion or interest in events or the game itself. So I framed the video around 3 major points that I sent to Ceeg ahead of time. First, it was about accountability. We tried it, it messed up, the background, and what went wrong in the moment. Then initial steps, fixing it. Focused on what the remedy is to get this sort of event up to a standard where it can be completed. Next was what Offworld wants to do in this space of hosting events, whether competitive or casual. Ceeg agreed to this direction, so on late March 24th, I sent over some interview questions. Then on Tuesday, March 25th, he reviewed those in the afternoon, took some notes, and then we jumped into an interview on that same day. So that's the background on how this video came about. Now we're going to dive into the interview, and then afterwards, I'll talk a little bit more about some of my overall thoughts, and you'll have some chapters down below that'll kind of break up the interview into questions because I didn't want to edit this a ton. Ceeg, thank you for taking the time to come on and talk to us about Squad Arena, and if we can start off with just an introduction of you and your role at Offworld.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm Ceeg. I'm the community manager for Squad, specifically at Offworld. I've been here for literally today is my 1-year anniversary of being at Offworld. Yeah. So I've been a Squad player since about 2019, on and off, pretty casual. But I've always loved the game since I've been involved, and being at Offworld has been, funnily enough, like a little bit of a pipe dream for a while. I was applying for all sorts of jobs and finally landed here. So it's been really, really great this last year.
Well, congratulations on the 1 year.
Oh, thank you.
So we're going to talk about Squad Arena. That is the focus of today's conversation. A little bit of a debrief from the event, talking about what happened, what inevitably went wrong. And I realize it's been a while since Offworld hosted a competitive event, so I want to start there. Can you talk a little bit about the plan and intention behind the event itself?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a long time since Offworld did anything kind of competitive or tournament related. My understanding of it was the OICS, the Off-World Industries Squad Competitive, I think was the name of it. That was the last big thing that really happened. And I mean, teams churn in and out over time, and that team is completely and utterly gone. Everyone who worked on that, and apart from some of the higher ups, it's all completely different. And I think the team at the time, I don't really have any real understanding of why it all got dropped. And I've asked around and no one really does seem to know. But they didn't really leave any kind of plan for the future either. And honestly, I think COVID kind of threw a wrench in that plan. Everyone was work from home at the time. It just, I guess, was one of the things that the priority just kind of shifted, And I mean, I've been with Offworld for a year now, like I mentioned, and literally within my first month of being here, we set up goals for ourselves, personally as well as on a team level, and then overall team. So when I say on a team level, I mean on the community team, which is run by Sergeant Ross, which everyone will have recognized as a name. He's our director of community on the executive level for Offworld, but he's also a Squad founder. He's been around since the days of it being Project Reality and everything. And we literally, in that first month, we talked about Squad Competitive, we talked about the OISC, what that was, what we could potentially be doing in the future, and how it is my job to make sure that we return to that in some way. And honestly, one of my first things that I said was like, cool, I'll go back and I'll review the VODs. And I did. I went and I watched a bunch of OISC and I was like, we need to do something different. Like this was great in its inception and the current form, but there's something better that we can do to work towards. So this event, Squad Arena, was used as a bit of a like proof of concept. Like the idea was like, could I, as well as other members on the community team that were helping me, execute on an event and using the community as like a tool and resource to kind of get it done. And the big reason that we kind of leaned into the community for this side of things was that the dev team, like the entirety of the squad team, are working their way through Unreal Engine 5. And it's a big thing. Like we really can't, like with the timeline of things, which there'll be more about this week. There'll be news on that. Like the timeline's so tight, like, and we've already had to go through some delays, which I'm sure everyone's noticed. We've mentioned a couple of times. We wanted to see if we could do this without dev team support because we couldn't pull people realistically off of that to kind of to do it for us. And we had some snags, we like to say the least, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I want to talk real quick about the format. It's a 16v16 infantry focused event. What just real brief, like what led to wanting to do infantry focused 16v16?
I mean, to me, like Squad has these incredible like vertical slices that you can look at for all types of players, but the core of that is infantry combat. You know, like a brand new player isn't going to jump into an MBT on the team and just drive off and you know, and play the game that way.
We hope they won't.
We hope they won't, right? And that's generally the way like different server communities run. Like that's something that doesn't happen. Sure, I've as a newer player in Armor, I've jumped into matches where I've been able to jump in and be a gunner for a guy who's like helped me. I remember very vividly driving around on Goose Bay with a guy in, I think it was an M1A1, like and really having a great time. But that's not your general squad experience for the first time player, or even like, you know, first couple of 100 hours. Like it's infantry. They're going to pick up a rifleman kit. They're going to try and shoot at the other team. That's kind of like, you know, an FPS game. People are going to expect that. So I wanted to see if there was a way that we could, using this tournament specifically, showcase some like fun infantry focused fights. And that was just the goal this time around. You know, you've seen it in the history of Squad. There's been things like Track Attack. We did have, like months ago, we had like a fun community day run on the community server where we did use a slightly varied version of Steel Division, where it was like lots and lots of vehicles on a map, and that was the goal. That was just a fun community day thing, though. That wasn't an actual tournament. But yeah, but that doesn't mean then that for the next tournament that we run, maybe we do want to do something armor based. We want to change things up as often as we can, and that was kind of like the design premise around Squad Arena: infantry focused team fights.
Yeah, I like the premise. I think that's obviously a large portion of the game. I don't mind that it was a infantry focused fight by any means. It's no different than having an armor tournament or something along those lines. So I thought it was an interesting concept. I know that the platform basically for Squad Arena is all built on modding by the community. Yep. This was a paid opportunity, right? So like, what was that process? How long was it in progress? And from build standpoint through testing.
Okay. Yeah. So I had the idea to get modders involved in this, and you can, we have the Squad mod SDK Discord that any player, anyone who at all can join. It's a public server. And I went into that server, I made an announcement, and I was like, hey, like modders who would be interested in helping us make fun mods for Squad for an official kind of capacity, let me know if you're interested. And I got a whole bunch of people's names in. I filtered through their experience and picked out 3 modders. And those then, well, it dropped down to 2 during production time. But those people then had experience in what I was looking for, specifically to make the Squad Arena um, mod. But yeah, it was paid. I mean, based on our budget, like, and I mentioned before, this was like a proof of concept kind of idea. I was able to get a certain amount of money put aside. I told the modders in advance, I was like, hey, this is how much money I have to pay you guys. I'll do a simple split. And is everyone okay with that? And everyone was like, everyone agreed to it. I feel like I would, like, I want to be able to continue to be doing paid opportunities for these kinds of things, especially whenever they're being used in an official capacity. And I mean, some of the modders didn't even want to take money. They just wanted to do it for the love of the community, which, I mean, I had to fight them on it. I did, and I made sure that, invoices were created and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a paid opportunity, and I do want to continue to do that.
So in the question, I was asking also about the timeline for the mod creation. Ceeg followed up with more exact dates. So basically, a call out was made on January 27th of this year. It appears that the modding team was collected about another 24 to 48 hours later. And the mod was started roughly within 3 days of that main post. And February 21st would have been the first opportunity Ceeg got to actually walk through the mod. And nobody at Offworld had any involvement with the mod itself.
None. Okay. No, none at all. I mean, like, other than myself in terms of like design requests, but no one opened up the SDK from the Offworld side of things and like fixed things or changed things or designed anything. It was all our modding team.
Gotcha. I mean, I think it's
player modders.
Right. I think it's cool that it's a paid opportunity. I've worked with other game devs that do similar things where, modder, they'll pay modders to go out and create content for games. I think it's a good community thing. So as we approach the announcement of the event, the original event, I think it was almost like a week timeline, a week and change from the original date that it was supposed to happen. Can you give us like a little walkthrough of why it was originally delayed?
Yeah. So the event itself, as I mentioned, like there was a lot of planning behind the scenes and so on. The opening up of getting teams to sign up was definitely a shorter turnaround time. In hindsight, that's something I need to change going forward, and we will change going forward. But the initial delay, so we had a date set for like a week and a half ago or a week ago Saturday, and I mean, the long and short of it is that the mod had issues at that time. It was different issues from the ones we came up against over the weekend, but it had issues. There were some things that during testing we found, and then the actual time it was taking to fix that problem and then recook the mod and go back in for more testing. We reached a point where it was like a Wednesday afternoon or a Thursday morning before the Saturday. And everything else was starting to line up, but the mod wasn't. So I had been speaking with Sergeant Ross actually, and he was like, contingencies, like what have you set up for yourself in this? And I realized quite quickly that I hadn't set up a contingency for the mod not working ahead of time with enough like testing to kind of go forward. And I mean, that's on me. Like that is something that I really should have set up before. For anyone watching this that has been involved in the closed player test, like you can see how much iteration we do in terms of giving the players notification of like a test coming up, how much time then we, which something that you wouldn't really see is like we take all of the feedback, bring it internally, make all of the changes, QA test all of that, and then bring it back to the CPT or the closed player testing realm for more iteration and testing on the larger scale. I didn't implement enough of that with enough time on our side for Squad Arena, and that's basically what ended up happening the first time. We reached a point where the mod just wasn't ready, so I had to make the hard decision at that time to delay by a week.
And you're saying that was separate issues from what we faced this past Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I right now off the top of my head, I cannot remember exactly what it was that came up, but it was just one of those things that the modders were working really hard. They had it fixed theoretically before the Saturday, but they didn't have we didn't have enough of a we didn't know that it would be ready by that time, so we just decided not to go forward with it.
Got you. So then going from the original delay to the actual event date, were there still red flags that week, or was the kind of idea that we thought we had kind of moved past everything? It sounds like we had kind of moved past the issues we knew about.
Yeah, we had moved past the issues we had known about. We ran more testing the week before the event, but we were relying once again on like community members to help us with testing, as well as myself. People just coming in, volunteering their time, and I mean, the simple part is that we just didn't have enough testing done. And that's on me again. Like I was the production lead for this, as well as like the design lead. The modders were just working off of my kind of design brief that I had asked of them. Had we had a server running and having 32 people join and leave and join, like so that we could catch this problem, which by the way, the problem was the one that caused us to cut everything off. The problem was disconnects, specifically from from the northern spawn of the map. Something was happening there. And it was just something we just didn't catch during testing. And I'm not sure why, realistically, other than we could have had more people and more testing. But yeah, like, I mean, other than that, there were not really many other red flags other than we lost a couple of teams on the day just due to scheduling. My team that I had, we call them the tournament council. They were amazing. They made me stream assets on the go. They were updating like the team. What's the word? Like the matchups with the times and stuff like that. So yeah, the different brackets. So I was able to like put them up on the stream and so on. And they walked me through setting up the seeding process so that we could do a recording and send that out to the players so that they knew that the seeding was fair. But yeah, I mean, one of the other things, I guess, like in hindsight, like looking at it, I should have recognized that trying to get 20 teams to play on one day was just a bad idea. Like we just aren't at that point yet. I should have spread it out over a longer period of time. And I should have just kind of thought that direction on a much smaller scale, basically.
Yeah, because I know that, like, you know, some of what I saw just from in my brief stint, like shoutcasting with Urso, was just like we saw people like getting disconnected basically between it. For those that don't know, when you have a modded layer, you typically want to do a warm up in a modded layer and stay modded through that whole process. And it seemed like that's where a lot of the disconnects and issues were happening with players, along with, you know, whatever the server was feeling. I think, you know, in fact, some of my advice and feedback to you was just like, we just need to simplify. It just needs to be like trimmed up and hopefully find like a platform that's a little bit more stable, I guess, because that seemed to be what was happening. It was that also made it difficult from my standpoint to see too, like when rounds were going like live or not, because it would be half a team would be fully spawned in and the other team was kind of stationary, and then all of a sudden it would drop 5-6 people instantly. Obviously the issues like weren't going away despite some attempts to fix it. Can you kind of walk us through the decision of deciding to cancel it? Because obviously that's not a fun decision.
Yeah. So I mean the decision to cancel. I mentioned it earlier. Something I kind of recently learned from a call with Sergeant Ross was make contingencies. And talk to your team about those contingencies. And this is one that I just didn't put in place for the Squad Arena tournament. I should have thought of it, but luckily enough, the team of volunteers that I had around me, my tournament council, as well as casters, yourself or so, we jumped in a Discord call. I quickly went over what the issues were that I had been seeing, and then we came up with a couple of choices. And kind of talked about that. So we said, you know, basically option one, we keep going. We spent more time in the rounds getting reconnects back in, which we could have done. It would have worked, but it would have taken, you know, potentially double the amount of time to get through the event, which was already going to be a very long day. It was already going to be like 6.5 hours based on our best case scenario. The other option was then that we call it where it is. We stop. We respect the players and the viewers' time, which was really important to me. I wanted to make sure that, like, all these players who have put so much time and effort into being there, organizing their teams, I wanted that respected. I didn't want to waste their time. And in that case, like, I would rather that I take the hit, Offworld take the hit, in terms of like, uh, you know, bad PR as has kind of been put, than force them into 10 hours of fighting a mod versus fighting each other in the arena. And the team agreed with me. Like, it was definitely a team decision. Like, we all talked about it. And once we decided on that, I let the players of the event know that the decision was there, and a lot of people agreed that it was the right decision. People were pissed though. Like, it's one of those things that, like, they set aside time, people rescheduled things, and it's completely understandable that they were upset.
Can you talk about, let's look forward a little bit. So we kind of know some of what happened and, related to the mod and the issues and the decision to cancel. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of next steps and what are some initial key learnings that you've gathered from feedback and you want to implement? I know from just briefly discussing it with you that Squad Arena is something you want to bring back. This is not something that's just going to disappear. And let's start with that real quick and just give me some insight into that.
Yeah. So I mean, these issues aren't going to shake us. Like, no matter what, we're going to bring Squad Arena back. Giving up on it is not an option. We know that there's a fun game mode here. We've seen it. Players have played it and they enjoyed it, including like comp players, like competitive players enjoyed what they got to play. And it may not be for everyone, and it's definitely not Squad. But as I mentioned before, it is that vertical slice of Squad that can be enjoyed just as it is. But going forward, like, I mean, short term, with the Offworld team, like my team, the community team, we're having like a retrospective meeting this week where we can look at what went wrong, what went well, and what we can do better. And then once that's done, I'll share that feedback with the volunteer team and see how we can move forward with as much feedback from them as possible. It's going to be as collaborative as I can possibly make it. But yeah, Squad Arena is going to come back. It'll be different, maybe not too different, but it'll definitely come back.
And I think something else you did right away that the team did was start asking for feedback from players and folks that were involved in the back end of that. I'm assuming you've seen some good feedback in that regard as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as I said there, like, the feedback in general was it's a good game mode. It was the tournament organization was like rough. The mod not working kind of out of our hands on the day, but it should have been better kind of presented and prepared in advance. But yeah, there's definitely also been some good feedback in terms of like maybe potentially changing the time of day to a day layer, fixing like some of the collision issues that were there, as well as the obvious, just fixing the bugs that stop the mod from working as intended.
Yeah. And one last note is if you could give us a breakdown of sort of Offworld's, I guess, intention in being more involved with not only community run events, tournaments is kind of what you've indicated to me, but just what are you guys looking to do over the longer term? Like, let's say we are able to get to a point where Squad Arena is coming back. Like, what do you want folks to know and take from the push from Offworld to get more into this space of hosting your own events while also supporting the competitive community?
Yeah, I mean, I did kind of touch on this before, but like, all I can say in the long term is that competitive tournaments are a big part of my job for 2025. That's like community organized tournaments as well as official Offworld ones. I want everyone who runs a tournament to be able to get in touch with me, because there's a lot going on this year from a community side plus like an official side. I can't go into like crazy amounts of detail because I want Squad Arena to work first, if that makes sense. Like, at that point, once we successfully manage that, there's more to come. But there's a lot we want to do this year, from like sponsoring events. Maybe that's like helping with the costs of servers for matches, as well as providing some like more eyes on for the community by advertising in our Discord, on our social media, potentially doing like watch parties, on our Twitch channel, or allowing people in different tournaments to stream directly to our Twitch channel, just to create a little bit more community around the competitive scene inside of Squad, because it's there. It's important to Squad.
All right, Ceeg, you got kicked out of your room, so we had to switch spots.
Yeah, that was my mistake. There was a meeting booked in the room. I didn't set aside enough time for this, the kind of impromptu call. So this is the view from my desk.
Very nice. So let's talk a little bit. Like we were just discussing some of like Offworld's intention, like moving forward into the future. What is, like, on a personal level for you? This was to some extent a crash course on doing a tournament. Talk about what you've kind of figured out personally and what you want to do sort of moving forward along with Offworld.
Yeah, I mean, I do like your terminology, crash course there, but I think it was it had more planning done than like a crash course. But there was an awful lot for me to learn in doing it, right? So I think that's where the feelings were, is that the things that I had tried to do need to be like scaled back, and also elongated in the amount of time that I like apply for these things to successfully take place. Like, for example, I wanted 20 teams to, or I opened this up to as many teams as possible. First thing that I should have done is limited it to 16, 24, the amount of people that fit into a bracket properly, so that it was like easy eliminations, not having to do extra rounds. And the big part of that is trying to have all 20 of those teams play on the same day. Like, that was my biggest like feeling that I made in the planning ahead of all of this. I wanted that from the get-go, right? And that was my mistake. Like, I planned from the very beginning to say everyone's going to play on the same day, because my goal with the design of Squad Arena was that it would actually be relatively short rounds and short matches. Like, we want people to go in and fight and kill the other team, move on to the next round fast. Think like even as fast as like CS:GO or Rainbow Six Siege. Those are fast rounds. So that was definitely like a big hurdle. And because every single one of those games was meant to be streamed, that just like elongated that amount of time that was necessary. If it was just recordings, we probably could have done it all in one day, because we could have had multiple people recording, people set aside in different places to do the shoutcasting and everything. And those recordings could have been happening 2, 3 at a time, depending on how many matches were being done at the same time, right? Everything could have been like stacked. But the combo of the streaming plus all of the games was just a huge unnecessary time sink that was very, very obvious on the day. I will definitely be splitting it out over multiple days.
I mean, the benefit of, I understand the interest in doing one day. I mean, from just my perspective, again, being a little bit of spectator, shoutcasting just a little bit, like you had 300 to 400 people viewing 2 different streams, which is great for not only just awareness of the event, but also for the Squad community. Like, I think that's a good thing. Now that sucks when it doesn't go as planned. That's not fun. But I think the awareness and the sort of interest, again, that you've also touched on with Offworld, wanting to be more involved in this space. I guess the area that I think, we discussed a little bit after the tournament was trying to figure out how to get the community involved a little bit earlier. So that it's not feedback in past tense, like it's kind of like the deliverables already happened, feedback is coming afterwards. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, moving forward we can involve, like the Rye Cave with Squad Esports or Squad Comp, and try to lean on some of these tournaments and expertise that some of these folks have had running community tournaments, and incorporate that earlier to, kind of not only educate in terms of what's worked in the past, but also, start running like something like Squad Arena more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's probably like another production failing on my part, and a learning that I'm definitely taking forward. I I had members of the competitive community, organizers of tournaments, that I've been talking to in DMs for months now, like months before Squad Arena was even planned. TGO, Rykiv, Crow, Filthy Crab, Alexi Blade. There's an awful lot of those guys who I have been talking to about different things for months. And therefore, whenever I came to squad tournaments and the tournaments Discord specifically, there was an awful lot of names that I had in mind from previous conversations that I wanted to bring in on this from the beginning. What I didn't do was expand that reach even further to because there's so many tournaments. There's that I didn't have any representation from the the SCI. I didn't have any representation from the one I only just found out about this weekend. I can't remember what the
International Masters.
International Masters. I didn't have anyone from Titan League. Titan League would have been such an easy one for me to have. They run small squad based tournaments. It's like what 12v12 I think.
18v18.
Oh, 18. Okay, that's even closer to what I needed, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the fact that I didn't have all of that was a mistake. And now I am going to have all of that. I'm going to have an open call, basically. People who are watching this video, take this as an open call. You know where to find my DMs. They're always open inside of the squad community Discord. Let me know what your experience is, and I will get you into the tournament Discord, part of our team that can be providing feedback as we are completely transparent about what our plans are. This wasn't sprung on these guys in out of nowhere, and they were asked to within a week to get everything up and running. Our planning had been going for a while, and they have helped me an awful lot. I don't think I could have had the Squad Arena tournament even go up to the point where it could launch without everyone that I already had. So having more people will only mean the potential for success goes up. So I've lost myself. Yeah. So these are my members of my tournament council, right? And after the fact, after the event, they gave me some really great feedback, including things like this, what I'm just mentioning, get more people involved going forward. And I think, like you said, that's going to help us with it. Having that preemptive feedback on the ideas in terms of like one of the things you said, simplify the mod. If that had been feedback that we had gotten in advance with as much I don't know, with good insight like yours, then I think it would have been something we could have changed. Something as simple as like making the sudden death mechanic go away and just having it that instead of having bots, the round is counted on like tickets remaining.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That would have been a simplified way of ending the round. The timer would have ended at that 6-minute mark instead of extending until the players get found by a bot and shot.
Yeah, that was sort of my initial thing. Is I think ultimately like people just want to play squad. Whether it's infantry, whether it's a tank, and the passion is there to make this event great and make it into something that people can watch and take part in. And but at the end of the day, people just want to play the game. And I think the big thing that I noticed, for example, the bots didn't even come into use because of how the rounds operate. So while in the way you're playing squad in that situation too, being a one life event, is you're valuing the life more, right? Because you have to be careful. And really the fights were a minute and a minute and a half. It was positioning, and then zoom to the objective. But I think, just sort of simplifying some of the extras, because in the end, I mean, even other events that are similar formatted, there is a simplicity in the fact that it comes down to, for infantry, like position, aim, quickness, like understanding the sort of strategy of how to tackle a map like that, because it did create its own problems with its sight lines and stuff. And I think that's where you see a lot of the competitive juices start to flow for folks, especially, if we can have something where beforehand they're looking at the mod and they get a chance to scrim on it in practice. And then just, again, the value of the event goes up, because then it's going to be more intense when those guys start, logging in. But
yeah, absolutely. I think just to kind of speak to the design idea behind like the rounds. So there was like a 6-minute round.
Yep.
3 minutes were going to be just infantry fighting, positioning, like you said. And then a random capture point was going to open up across the middle of the map. I think it was like 9 or 11
Yeah, it
spots
was a
that were
lot.
randomized, I think. And I mean, okay, so looking at other games who have done something similar, the problem is at that point is if these teams have set up like in like a kind of like a turtling kind of thing where they're going to hold their position, watch the sightlines on the point. Anyone who pushes into the point is at a disadvantage. So we were worried then that no one would push into the point.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to have some sort of sudden death mechanic that would push people around, move them, but we didn't want to go for the kind of like the death wall that comes in like Fortnite. We wanted something a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah.
So that was the idea behind the bots. And I guess honestly, we just have to go back to the drawing board for it and just decide what way we want it to look like going forward. And that may be just like you said, simple. Just maybe we just do a ticket count and that's it. Say the team with the most people left alive win. However, at that point, is there any point in having the capture point at that point? Whereas teams will just turtle and hold and not actually push. So
Yeah,
it's a design decision we need to figure out, and we'll figure it.
well, Ceeg, I appreciate you taking the opportunity to chat with me and to kind of do this debrief on the event. And I'm hopeful that we can see Squad Arena, at some point soon, and in a position where it can be, I think, what you and I mean myself and plenty of others, hope that it can be. I think it's an important thing that you guys are involved in this sort of stuff and hosting events and active in that space. So I'm hoping that we get it to where it needs to be and we can really enjoy it. And maybe I'll get to shoutcast a few more.
Yeah, absolutely. You're more than welcome to. And I mean, Squad Arena isn't going to be the only thing that comes along. I mentioned it before. This is our proof of concept that we can do this. It's a huge part of my job for 2025. And that's just getting started. It's already March. If everything goes well, 2025, we get even more ability to kind of push forward and keep this ball rolling. Because that's the goal. The goal is to start it up and move it forward as much as we possibly can because it deserves to be up there.
So that is my interview with Ceeg, which I left as unedited as I could. There's only a couple edits in because we had to switch rooms. We had someone knocking on the door at one point, but ultimately it is in its entirety, or as close as I could get to it, because I felt like that kind of transparency was important. But I will remind everyone, I'm not a journalist. This is not going to be broadcast on the national news or anything like that. But I was pretty hesitant in being involved with this, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, most of you already know my content on this channel is largely educational or informational about updates and stuff like that. So this is certainly a departure from what I would normally make. But the thing that stuck with me and the reason I wanted to do this video is because I felt like when you have something like this that results in the problem that it resulted in, the failure of running the event, it was important to understand what key learnings could come out of that. How do we get from what we did, with Squad Arena to a better performing event? How do we get to other events down the road, that might perform at a high level, and Offworld can be involved in that with the community? To some extent, game devs sometimes get put in this impossible situation. If they're involved with the community, people are going to complain about something like the format of an event. If they aren't involved with the community, people are going to complain about the lack of involvement. And of course, if the event fails, there's going to be complaints. So to some extent, one could ask, is it beneficial for Offworld to even try? I think it is. I do think it is important for game devs to be involved in the game. If they can host events, if it's that sort of game where you can host something or support modders or whatever, I think that's really important for a game dev to be involved with. And the fact that 2 streams had a total combined somewhere around, let's say, 300 to 400 viewers at times waiting for these matches to happen, there's obviously community interest. Not to mention over 20 teams signed up, and you had to field a roster of 16. So you're looking at up to 320 people initially signed up. I think that's pretty significant. So the main bullet points that I shared with you all earlier, which were sort of the, bullet points of what my questions were going to cover, were pretty significant. And that was the only way I saw this video being something beneficial for the community is, taking accountability for it and trying to figure out where we go from here. And that was largely the requirement for me to even participate in this, to take this opportunity, because I didn't want to sit there and dabble in the failure of the event or the negativity surrounding it. This is not meant to be a response to anything. It is more so focused on, okay, it happened, let's talk about it, and then let's look forward. But I do hope that this gives you some insight into what Offworld is trying to accomplish, what Ceeg is also trying to accomplish. And my hope is that there's continued sort of a mutual relationship with Offworld and the community to work together to create events like this, because this did take a lot of community members, not only modders or the folks that had, teams participating in the event, all the folks on the roster, but there's also server owners like Unnamed who had Meckles there supporting the event. You had Rycave with Squad Esports. You had guys from Squad Comp, including Crove, that were helping adjust brackets in the last minute. And of course, creators like myself or Yurso that were prepping to shoutcast some of these events. And I know I'm going to leave names off and I apologize, but kudos to the community because this was a community event too. And I do hope that Squad Arena gets to a point where it can be held to the standard that we all want it to be, along with other events in the future that Offworld may be involved with or hosting. So with all that said, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with your thoughts, and of course, please keep them constructive, and I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, with a lot of custom terrain and so on, kind of edited and created. As you can see, if you slide your camera, your admin cam